If you've ever had trouble putting in practice a mindfulness and meditation situation in your life, today's show is for you. Listening to the show live, you will know that we have brilliant partner offers to help you with your low-tox swaps. Enjoy these offers from Forest Superfoods and OzClimate. Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. And I'm so happy to be having this conversation. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on when I came across your work was this anti-guru vibe. You are all about actually helping people make the meditative arts their own and how it shows up for them and how they can integrate it into their daily lives. Where did the study of all of this start for you in your life?
I was introduced to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way, in that a long time ago, I was about 19 years old. I had a boxing coach who was very influential on my life and pointed me in a lot of different directions, but one of them was meditation and Tai Chi. It's not too common to think of boxing and meditation together, but he told me once that if I really wanted to be good at boxing, I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And at the time, I was a 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't that for like older people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter?
Yeah, the retirees who are there at like 6 in the morning. Yep.
Yeah, and I started doing the practice, and not only has it changed my life in many ways throughout the years, but I've had thousands of students come through the academy and thousands more online that I've worked with. And I've heard hundreds of stories through the last 30 years on how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so motivated to get out there and share this information and try to help as many people as I can with it.
And what did you notice in your own life as you brought more and more of them on board and complementing what we would think to be a really aggressive way of showing up physically with these more intentional, slow, centering ways to show up?
Well, for myself, it was understanding the different paths that you can take a meditative practice. And that was very helpful. And I've broken down the meditative arts into kind of 5 categories on how you do the training. And one of them would be the performance side. And this is why many athletes turn to the meditative arts, because it helps them improve their awareness, their focus, their mind-body coordination. It helps them be more present so they can perform at a higher level. It teaches them how to get into that flow state without building tension and just be those higher level performers. And then we have the therapeutic side of the practice, which a lot of people turn to the meditative arts to help with their longevity and working through illnesses and recovering from injuries. And then we have the medical side of the practice, which, all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, which has been around for almost 5,000 years. And then we have the philosophical side of the practice, which has always been a kind of a passion of mine. And the reason why I like the philosophical side of the training so much is that it really helps you see things from multiple different angles. And so when you start to do that, it just opens up your horizons and how you can take things in and lead them to a positive direction. That's always been a passion. And then lastly, there's the spiritual side of the practice, which I think is what most people think of when they hear the words meditation. And so as you start to create an evolving life practice with the meditative arts, you can follow any one or combination of these paths, and you'll take things from ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices and start creating a personalized life practice with the meditative arts. And just for those of you that don't know what I mean when I say ritual and active practices, ritual practices are when you set time aside every day, you turn off the screens, you're not listening to any audios, and you just turn your focus inward. A lot of times people refer to as the meditative arts as the internal arts. And the reason why they're called the internal arts is because we look at a deeper level inside of ourselves. And if you're trying to follow a video or listen to an audio, you're kind of thinking outside of yourselves. And so when we're doing our actual ritual practice, we want to turn that focus inward. And then active practices, this is a great way to bring our meditation strategies and ideas into everything we do in life. And they can be done when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. It could be as simple as taking in a few breaths and trying to be more present in the body, or going through a short movement series, or something to just bring that present state of awareness into your body and your mind and things that you're doing, so you have that ability to start living the meditation lifestyle rather than being a hobby that you do once in a while.
Or
And
that
I
you
think,
always have to be making time for, which is something a lot of people get caught up around.
yeah,
Uh,
that's one of the things that I've heard over and over again through the years is people saying, I don't have time to do the practice. I'm too busy,
mm,
and I think a lot of that comes just from not understanding the practice and how it was intended, because everybody has the time. In fact, the Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour.
yeah, I love that one.
I
Yeah,
like that saying, in that,
yeah.
it's everybody's got the time. And through the years, teaching for over 30 years, one of the things that I found is that oftentimes people that come in that think they're too busy for the practice, but then they put the time in and they make it happen, they find that they're more productive and they actually get more done because they're more focused and more centered. And so the meditation practice, I don't feel like it takes away from your life or the things you have to do. It just adds value to it.
Yeah, I love that. I have a coaching group of small business startups in my space, Jeff, and one of my favorite things to do is action sessions. And as you were saying that, everyone has the time and then you end up more focused and more productive. Can I ask you live for a small piece of advice on if you were going into a group action session where everyone's picking a thing they're going to work on and it's their top priority thing, but then there's the phone, then there's, the thing, and then there's all these things happening, and you can easily get to the end of an hour that you thought was going to be about one thing that you have as a really high priority, and then you let it go. And a lot of people in the age of screens and distractions find it really tough to refocus. Can you take us through like what a little 1 minute, 2 minute kind of this go inward, breathing in the supermarket line, but like with an intention as to how to go forward in the next section of your day? Because I feel like in modern life, it's so easy to think you're about to do something and then go off and do a million other things. What could that look like from that practical aspect that you were just talking about?
So there's a lot of different directions we could take this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so we'll do things with movement practices, with breathing strategies, with philosophical sayings and concepts that help program the mind. The biggest thing is, though, is understanding that the meditative arts is not meant to be a pill that we take after
Mm,
we're stressed out. It's something that we want to live the practice. So then when we do get in those stressful moments, it's easier, one, to recognize the imbalance, but two, because we have such a good foundation in our practice and we do
mm.
this every day, that we can integrate some of these active practices, which I'll show you in a minute, a couple examples. When we do integrate them, we get a deeper level of feeling and awareness in the practice because we do this and we turn to it every day. And I think a lot of time people, they think that if they get stressed out or they have anxiety, that they'll do a breathing exercise when they have a panic attack. But the idea is that we want to do this practice so we don't have the panic attack and not
Mm,
try to use it as fix all afterwards. And if you use the practice that way, you'll get a lot more out of it. Now,
yeah.
coming back to your question and seeing a couple ideas of some things you could do to help bring that back to focus, one of the things could be just paying attention and doing like a body scan and noticing if you're holding any tension in the body, and noticing if your skeleton is slouching, or if your shoulders are bent
I know. I
over, or
just
if you're
straightened
standing upright.
myself up as you said that.
And those kinds of things, we're in control of all day, every day. And if you can maintain that correct structure and alignment, it takes a lot of physical and mental stress out of our lives. And so that awareness is key. And by having a regular meditation practice, we're able to notice these imbalances before we spend 2 or 3 hours in this this weak posture where it's kind of draining us. And then another thing you could do is oftentimes we get so caught up in the stresses and the things that we have to do every day that we lose track of our breath. And so I think returning to the breath on a regular basis is very important. And there's this exercise that I call the quickie, and it's where I have students take their phones and set an alarm to go off every 60 or 90 minutes. And every time the alarm goes off, they just count out 10 slow, deep, full breaths with a good posture and pay attention to where they're feeling and how they're sitting, how their tension is in the body, where their mind is at, and bring themselves back into the present. Focus on the breath for 2 minutes, count out 10 breaths, and then go back on through their day. And by doing this over time, say you do that 10 times a day, as well as your ritual practice, you do that for a few months, you really start to develop a heightened level of awareness. And it's a lot easier to control those disturbances when they happen.
So, and I would imagine if we thought about that from like a biochemical science perspective, of what we know about the HPA axis, adrenal recovery, cortisol, you would be actually resetting your cortisol patterns as well. So you're literally not allowing yourself to keep going up, up, up into the, like, exiting the window of tolerance, but you're actually kind of keeping yourself checking back in all the time with what it feels like to be truly relaxed and present.
Yes, for sure. And part of the basic fundamental principles with the meditative arts are these underlying concepts that I call the five regulations. And an essential part of any meditation practice, whether you're doing Tai Chi or sitting meditation, standing meditation, yoga, Qigong, it doesn't matter what it is. But these five concepts are kind of like the building blocks. And when you understand that, you can see how focusing on them can help influence anything we do. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of touch on what I mean by these regulations.
Yeah, please.
The first one, regulating the body. The basic idea is, we already kind of touched on it a little bit. If you think about a time when maybe you're sitting in front of your computer and your shoulders are rounded forward, you've been there for 3 or 4 hours and you're feeling lethargic, maybe your neck's getting sore and very depleted. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. And so this is the basic idea of that body regulation. On a little bit of a deeper level of the body regulation, it's maintaining some sort of muscular development in the body to keep our metabolism up, keeping some bit of flexibility in the body, making sure that we can relax and keep our joints healthy, eating an appropriate diet, something that gives us enough nutrients to keep our energy levels up throughout the day, and then also getting enough sleep. And so all of these influence that body regulation. And then we have regulating the breath. And the breath is a very deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath. There's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies within the Qigong practice. Now, because of that, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. And yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations that bring the energy inward. And an example of that would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if you want to emulate this style of energetic expression in your meditative practice, we can do these longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy downward, down and inward. And this is very helpful for those that are working with stress disorders or have anxiety or panic attacks. It's also good for boosting your creativity and finding that inner focus. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to use the exhale, put tension in the breath, maybe even make it audible. And this helps expand the energy in the body. And when you learn how to use the breath strategically in this manner, you can now use it to regulate your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So the
Hmm.
breath is a very important part of our meditation journey.
Can I ask, Jeff? So, my thinking was that you wanted to make the exhale longer to relax more into a meditative state. And you've said the opposite.
It depends on how you're using the breath. So when
Yeah,
we
okay.
use,
Only because I know people will have
yeah,
heard that or done it in their
yeah,
yoga class. So, can you go real nerdy on us and
yeah,
explain that in a little more detail so we understand the difference between a shorter exhale and a longer exhale and what that gives us?
of course, yeah. So when we are leading the energy in the body, oftentimes we use what we call reverse abdominal breathing. And reverse abdominal breathing is when we inhale, rather than have the belly expand, when we inhale, the abdomen comes in and the perineum lifts. And this helps generate force and power. And we do this naturally anytime if you were to cry or you laugh or you push something heavy, you naturally revert to this reverse abdominal style breathing because it builds power and it leads the energy. So
Mm-hmm.
when you are doing this style of breath, we have on the inhale, we are now doing 3 yin actions. The in breath is a yin, the belly coming in, the hu yin coming up is a yin action because these are all contracting. And then on the exhale, when they're all pushing out, these are all yang actions. And so we can use this balance to get more yin energetic expression or yang energetic expression, which is more powerful. Now, if we're just doing normal abdominal breathing and we're just exhale, letting it all out and let it extend, this can be very relaxing, and that's what you're referring to. But both of those kind of have a different approach, and that's why, they refer to Qigong as the science of the breath, because it is very complex and there's lots of different ways that we can utilize it to get different outcomes.
And so, can I, just so that I understand, so if I'm breathing out for longer, I'm expelling yang energy? Is that what's happening?
Well, it depends on if you're doing normal abdominal breathing or reverse abdominal breathing.
So it's actually about so when my yoga teacher says let your belly expand as you fill up with your breath and take your breath in, and then let everything relax on a longer exhale. What is actually the goal there from the meditative arts theory perspective?
So that is normal abdominal breathing
Okay.
that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do normal abdominal breathing, we're doing a yin and yang balance. So when we inhale, this is a yin expression. And when we inhale and expand the belly, this is a yang expression. So this is very relaxing and there's no forced direction. And so this is a very stabilizing breath and one that's very safe to practice and one that's easy to reach those levels of relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doing reverse abdominal breathing is kind of the opposite in that with reverse abdominal breathing, when we inhale, the abdomen and the perineum are coming up. And so we're forcing, it's kind of like we're blowing the water through the hose rather than just
Okay,
letting it
yeah.
drain through the hose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving it that power. And so with a lot of different energetic practices, we'll use the reverse abdominal breathing to get more power and more expression with that energy work that we're doing.
Okay. And so that is to fill us with more energy rather than to make us feel sleepy and chill.
It could be used for both sides. It could be used for
Okay.
the yin side or the yang side. So, for example, if we were doing that reverse abdominal breathing, we could focus on more of the exhale or more of the inhale, and we
Mm-hmm.
could do retentions at the end of the inhale or the end of the exhale to kind of expand and magnify that. So there's a lot of different ways that we could use that and
Yeah.
combinations of that to get those different energetic expressions.
Would you be willing to take us through it, given we have YouTube so people can watch visually or even can listen quite successfully so we can experience the difference right now?
Sure. So we'll do a couple breaths in each one. So
Mm.
with the normal abdominal breathing, the way that we think about this, and again, it's that yin yang balance. When you inhale, if we take like a long, slow inhale, the belly expands, the perineum expands. Take in as much air as you can comfortably. And then when you exhale, the belly contracts, the perineum lightly lifts, and the air comes out. Just do a few cycles of that and notice how it's very relaxing. Every time you exhale, you kind of start to sink a little bit deeper into your seat. Now, let's look at the reverse abdominal breath. Now, for those of you that haven't practiced this before, I recommend not trying to stretch it out too much and going maybe 60, 70% of your lung capacity rather than 100% because it will lead to stomach cramping if you're not used to it and you're trying to make too much power with it.
Oh,
But
wow.
if we do more aggressive breath, if we're looking at the yang side of the breath, now when we exhale, you think about like maybe you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy. Your
Mm.
natural instinct, we exhale, we
Yeah,
put
yeah.
tension in the breath, we make it audible. And as you do that, if you make that sound and you make that tension, notice how when we're exhaling, the belly is pushing out. And as you do that, that helps build that power. And that's why like weightlifters will wear the belts because they
Yeah.
naturally exhale when they lift, right?
Mm.
And so having that ability to have those three yang expressions on the exhale helps generate a lot of power and focus. And this also will help energize us on a more
Hmm.
subtle level. So we'll do sometimes when maybe you're feeling a little bit depleted, we might do a yang style breath like this, where we put a little bit of tension in the breath and make the breath audible, maybe use like the ha sound, and we'll use this to help energize us and pick us up on those times where we need a little bit of energy. And so those are kind of a couple examples of how you could use the breath for two different directions.
I love that because I think it helps illustrate in the simplest way what a tiny little shift and understanding the difference between those two things. We can actually then, we think about the meditative arts, we then practice and select based on what we need for that time.
Yeah.
Love it.
So back to our regulations. So we kind of little detour on the breath
Yeah,
side.
I know. I just know I have an audience of nerds out there around the world, and they would not let me go without a full explanation so we
Yeah, no, that's
completely
great.
understood. It's all good.
Yeah. So the mental side of the training, which is the next idea, is something that I feel like a lot of people get torn off track when they think about the meditative arts. Through the years, I've been teaching for over 30 years. I've had many people come and tell me that they've tried meditation, but it just didn't work for them because they couldn't quiet their mind.
Mm.
Somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful with meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing else bothers you. And I don't think they could be further from the truth in that,
Mm.
I've spent the last 36 years of my life traveling around the world, training with some very amazing meditation practitioners. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We're all human. That happens to all of us. But the difference is when we practice, if you're doing a meditation session and say you're sitting for 20 minutes or maybe doing a Tai Chi form for 20 minutes, and during that session, you get distracted 50 times. That's not 50 failures. That's 50 recognitions of the imbalance. And then we use our posture, our breath, our movement to come back to center. And now we just got 50 repetitions of being out of balance and finding focus. And if you
Wait.
do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop that power and that ability that no matter what throws you off your center, you're able to find that focus. And there's this story that I really like about these two old monks.
Uh-huh.
They're walking down a dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, and takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious, and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many
Mm.
times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we need to let that thing go or whatever it
Oh
is? And
my
so
gosh.
understanding how to regulate the mind and notice these imbalances is a huge pillar in the meditative practice, and one of the things that really helps us find that stability and focus.
Mm.
And then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And this is an extremely deep topic, and we touched on it a little bit with the breath.
Yeah.
But the basic idea is learning how to use the breath, the body, and the mind to lead the energy to get different outcomes. Most people, we all do it. We all go through the day with ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start to recognize these imbalances and have the strategies from these practices to adjust these imbalances, we can get through the day with a lot less ups and downs. And so this is a very powerful idea with the practice. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit. And this is a very profound idea. It's something that, if you do meditation, you'll be working with for the rest of your life. But the
Mm.
basic idea is learning how to elevate our excitement or our spirit, if you will, but at the same time staying relaxed and centered and focused and not getting tight. A lot of times when we get
Yes.
excited, the body tenses up. But when you can learn how to stay settled and rooted and then still lift the excitement, this is the idea of connecting with that spirit. And so having this idea of these five regulations will influence everything we do in life. And, if you approach the meditative arts with an educated mindset and somebody that's kind of helping point you down the right direction, you'll see endless benefits just from these things.
So good. And I was so captivated by what you said. I'm bringing us back there because this is a huge reframe that I think the whole world needs on meditation, where you said it wasn't 50 distractions, it was actually 50 reps. So, people understand doing like a set of 10 crunches or a set of 10 deadlifts or, getting your reps in. And I really feel like that explainer on you're actually getting your recenter, refocus reps in, and those distractions are therefore important and part of the work, and they're not going to go away. It's actually just about the practice of resetting and refocusing and recentering. I think that really, for me, brings it home that it is never a failure and it is never about, you're trying to get to the super quiet mind all the time place. And so many people, as you said, get stuck there. And I think that was just such a beautiful way to help us reframe that, Jeff, that it's just gold. And I have to come back to that and give it an extra moment, because I'd imagine that that really helped you in teaching your students to reframe it that way, for them to not feel like they were failing, that they were just doing work.
Yeah, it's as a teacher for over 30 years, that's one of the hardest challenges for me is how do I connect with them to show them that this really does have value, and if they put the time in, they're going to see so many benefits from this practice. So I've always looked for ways to try to reach more people with that. And through the years, I've come up with three things that I think that if people spend a little bit of time in each one of these areas, that it will help them reach deeper levels of practice and be much more successful with it. The first one is thinking about what is it that's drawing them to the practice? Do they want to improve their health? Are they dealing with a stress disorder? Or maybe they're an athlete and they're wanting to improve their performance. Whatever that is, and when they have that reason, what are 10 or 20 things that will positively change in their life by accomplishing that goal? Is it going to improve their interpersonal communication, their relationships with others, their health so they can watch their grandkids grow up? Whatever that is. And then flip the coin and think of 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if they don't do that.
Mm.
And what this does is it helps give us the fuel for those days when the alarm goes off and it's time to get up and do your meditation practice. And you're like, I'll hit the snooze button. I'll do it tomorrow. We want to have that fuel. So now we look at this as something we get to do and we're excited about it rather than a hobby or something that we have to do because we told our teacher we were going to do it.
Mm.
And this little mind shift makes a big difference.
And so connecting really with the benefits on a more realistic, like I can see my day from this work be much more likely to go the way I intend it to go.
Yeah, if you have a clear understanding of all of the things that this practice will do to lead to those benefits, then
Mm.
it adds more value as to why
Yes.
you're doing it, right?
Yeah, and there's so much in well-being these days that it's almost like people feel like they're overwhelmed with everything you have to add in to a life that already feels pretty full. But if you connect it to a more productive life outcome for the things that you prioritize and want to get done, then that is starting to just basically reshuffle the way you spend time.
Yes. And your mental perceptions on what you're doing with that time as well, I think
Yeah.
is very valuable. So the second consideration is understanding the importance of consistency. So many times in the practice where I'll see people and I'll ask them how their practice is going. They're like, "Oh, it's great. I did one time this week and I've been doing it every Sunday," or whatever that is for them. And, understanding that all of the value from this practice comes from that consistent daily effort. And there's this story about this old stonecutter that I really resonate with, and it's so closely connected to the meditative arts. And he was very well known because he made these beautiful sculptures of animals and landscapes, and his work was so unique and so special that anytime somebody saw it, they just knew it was his because it was just that much better than everybody else's. And because of that, he'd have people from all around come to stay with him for years at a time and study with him to apprentice and learn the trade. Well, every morning, this old stonecutter, he'd start his day off by meditating down by the river. And one day after his meditation session, he's walking along the river and he has this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall mystical Chinese jade dragon. And he's so taken by this vision that he just knows it has to be his next project. So he spends the next few months traveling all over looking for the perfect piece of jade for his new creation. And finally, when he finds it, he brings it back to his place. And for the next few days, he just spends time with the stone and feels the energy coming off the rock and tries to envision how this dragon's going to soon appear. When he begins working on the stone, he carefully placed his chisel in one specific place on the backside of the rock and started tapping away with his hammer, hundreds, if not thousands of times every day. And nothing changed. A few days went by and still nothing. A few more days went by and some of his apprentices started second guessing him, thinking maybe he should try something else. And nothing seems to be changing. A few more days went by and finally he tapped the chisel and a big 3 foot section of the stone comes off and created this smooth, slightly curved line that was going to be part of the dragon's back. One of his apprentices who was watching said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the stone?" And the stonecutter replied, "It wasn't that strike that broke the stone. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the stone." And with a bit of a discouraged tone, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you and there was no change. Why didn't you try something else?" And the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, each strike was not wasted. It was through that consistency and repetition that not only was a stone changing beneath the surface, but so was the one who wields the hammer. And the reason why I resonate so well with this story is that this is the meditative arts. And it's through these consistent day in and day out of practicing your sitting meditation, your breath work, these movement practices, studying these philosophical concepts, that we lay the foundation so we reap the benefits of this fruit for the rest of our life. And so having that understanding when you approach the practice really helps with the overall success of your journey. And then the third and final consideration is understanding the importance of a guide. The meditative arts is extremely deep. I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still just a student learning all the time. And if you think that you're going to go on YouTube or listen to some map and you're going to figure it all out, you're going to waste a lot of time and you're never going to get past the surface. It's not too hard to find somebody to be in your corner and help point you down the right direction. If you take a little bit of time and think about your why, understand the importance of a consistent effort, and have somebody in your corner, the chances of you being successful are greatly going to increase. And I guarantee you, if you keep that up for at least a year, it'll be one of the best things you ever do for yourself.
Oh, I love that advice, Jeff. And I really resonate with what you say there about it's not really too hard to find a guide. And it's important to kind of find a guide that you vibe with, right? Like someone you feel like you want to show up and do some work with. But to that point, given anyone can just open a creator or influencer account these days on social media, can you give us some tips as to how to find I don't want to say worthwhile guide. I would consider you an extremely worthwhile guide given how much time you have given to the practices and the arts. But let's just say someone started following a few people on Insta and think, oh yeah, I really like the way they do breath work and I'm going to start following them. And you did mention though, sometimes you can waste a lot of time. How do we avoid wasting time and actually finding guides that are going to guide us from a place of integrity?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is not randomly going onto Instagram or YouTube and following this person and that person and the other person, is finding somebody who has a system that you resonate with, that understands the full spectrum of the meditative arts, and that can help you build a personalized, evolving meditation practice around the things that you want to do for yourself. Because, not everybody develops the same way. Not everybody incorporates the same practices. Here, just even at my academy, through the years, I've had over 26,000 students come through my academy and thousands more online. I have never once seen any two students follow the same path. And if I was the person who had trained for 6 months and opened up my account and said, now I'm the master, then I'd be teaching my method. And that's what I see a lot out there, which is, I think, hard for people to really get a good interpretation of what meditation's all about. You
Yes.
want to have somebody that has a very well-rounded approach, that's been doing it for a long time. And what I recommend is, don't just go off of something that somebody tells you. I like to look at their students. How long has that person had a student with him? And what is the quality of those students? Do those students look like they understand what's going on? Or is this guy start up his program 6 months ago and now he's charging XYZ for whatever, and he's got nothing to back it?
He's got a white linen shirt though. That's very important.
I think that that's really important. If you can see that
Mm,
somebody is producing quality students that understand what's going on, and you resonate with what they say and you feel like energetically you connect,
mm.
then that might be a great place for you to investigate further.
Yeah, what I'm taking from you there is something I believe in wholeheartedly when I founded Low Tox Life and set up the pillars of food, body, home, mind, overarching planet. It's really about exploring a range of expertise, interpretations, perspectives, and then taking the life of doing a little better for my health and the planet every day into your own reality and making it your own from a deep place of understanding, right? And that's exactly what I'm hearing from you with the meditative arts, Jeff. I think it's so powerful. You don't want to protocolize people to within an inch of their lives because there's no deep understanding that comes from that. And we need to be getting the memo. It's the deep understanding and the appreciation for multiple perspectives as to how to approach things that is actually a much more likely path to inner peace and focus and cooperation and connection in the world. Lost you there, Jeff?
No, I'm still here.
No. Okay. And so I have one final question. And I know we shouldn't pick a favorite child. I get that. But do you have a favorite practice in your day that you genuinely feel like there is no chance I ain't making time to do that thing in my daily life?
Well, I do have a favorite time during the day, and every day the first thing I do in the morning is go through my one of my rituals, and that's something that's non-negotiable. In fact, I haven't missed a day since I had my hip surgery 6 years ago, and it's just kind of part of who I am. And within that ritual, I do a number of different things, from breath work to Dantian conditioning to some stretching exercises, some movement practices. So it's just kind of the way that I start every day.
Yeah, beautiful. Jeff, it's been so lovely to spend this time with you and get a window into how you have found a way to guide as many people as possible through the meditative arts with simple ways to explain things that are deeply complex, yet at least get us on the road to thinking, well, I get why this is going to be really powerful for me. I'm in. So we really appreciate your work and you coming and sharing with us on the show.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you loved today's show as much as I loved bringing it to you. I want to remind you that if you are someone who craves a low tox community that is judgment free, full of empowerment, has health professionals and building health professionals that can support you, as well as me in there answering questions multiple times a week, I want to invite you to join the Low Tox Club. For the price of less than a cup of coffee a month, you have an annual membership for $49 Australian, so it's about $30 US or euro, that allows you to have a member masterclass every single month with a health professional or global expert from the podcast, where we have them to ourselves for an hour to ask questions and deep dive further. You have the beautiful supportive chat group. You have Q&As with me answering questions. We read books and talk about them and a whole bunch more. You can head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the explore tab and join the club is the very first option on that list. Of course, we have over 10 evergreen courses that you can jump into anytime, whether it's navigating everyday low tox swaps with our Go Low Tox signature course, whether you have kids and you're wanting to know how to best support them with our Low Tox Kids course, whether you're planning a family and looking at a healthy low tox preconception journey, reducing inflammation, especially the chronic kind, with our Inflammation Ninja course, many other courses. You can again head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the courses tab, and you'll see all of the options, which includes a business course, my Low Tox Method program. A lot of people don't know, but I was doing a lot before starting Low Tox Life in 2009, and I was a business consultant across hospitality, health, retail, and cosmetics. I have been in business consulting for a very long time, so I absolutely adore helping people move into the low tox space or develop their low tox businesses. So that's a way I can support you. And then, of course, there's our wonderful social media communities at Low Tox Life on Instagram, and of course, the website with over 250 gluten-free recipes, blogs, downloadable PDFs to help you navigate wanting to get rid of synthetic fragrances in your school or office. I could go on. So head to lowtoxlife.com, see what takes your interest or fancy, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast community. I love reading your reviews. I appreciate every follow and subscribe, and I want to just remind you to finish off that if there's anything you heard that you found interesting from a medical or scientific perspective, it is intended as education only. Please always chat to a health professional who knows you and your situation best. I'll see you next week. Bye.